2010, our lives changed in a way we never imagined. It was a world we never knew existed. Our son David was born 7 weeks premature. He was immediately taken to the NICU because of his underdeveloped lungs. Hours later, 2 doctors walked into my hospital room. We knew something was wrong. They told us David had hypoplastic left heart syndrome. We were told we really only had 2 options: comfort care or stage surgeries. My heart shattered. We opted to try to save our son's life. David was immediately transferred to the PICU of a different hospital into a room which became our second home for the next 4 months. Our lives were hectic, not knowing what the next day, hour, or minute would bring. On January 20th, 2011, our new world came to an end. Our son was no longer in pain. He no longer had to fight for his life. The hospital was no longer his home. He now lives with Jesus. David's funeral was a very bittersweet moment for me. It was the first time I had ever seen him outside of the PICU. It was the first time I saw him in an outfit I'd waited so long to see him in. I bought David and his older brother Barry matching outfits when I was still pregnant with David. David's onesie said little brother and Barry's big brother. We brought Barry up to the casket and he told us that David was sleeping and that he looked just like him. After the funeral, when things started to settle down, that's when it all hit me. What do I do now? How do I go back to my old life? Life is about moving forward, not going backwards. Everything was the same as it was before David was born, except us. We were not the same people anymore. When I was asked to speak about what it's like to lose a child to a congenital heart defect, I didn't realize how hard that would be to put into words. Losing my child has been far different for me than any other loss I've had. Losing David changed almost every aspect of my life. I was no longer able to sleep at night without thinking about him. There were times the pain was so physical that I could literally feel myself holding him. Obviously, I wasn't really holding him, but I could feel the weight of him on my arms. Or I would feel myself patting his butt to calm him down like I did while he was intubated and could not be held. There were numerous times I would reach for the phone to call the hospital to get an update on how he was doing, only to remember he was no longer there and I knew how he was. Losing a child to a congenital heart defect is coming home from the hospital to find an empty crib, one that was prepared for him weeks before he was born. It's not wanting to take his crib down, because in the back of my mind I'm praying this is all just a dream. It's eventually coming to the point where I gave almost everything away. Anything he wasn't able to use, I wanted gone. It killed me seeing the things normal babies get to use, but David never got the chance to be a normal baby. It's not being able to part with anything he did use. I kept those things to look at, to listen to smell, and I remember it all so clear that I feel like I'm back in the hospital room again. Losing a child to a congenital heart defect is living in constant fear. It's always worrying, is something going to happen to my other child? It's seeing a pregnant woman and being fearful for her that they might have missed something on her ultrasound, that she soon might be living the same life we are. But by far, my biggest fear is that David will be forgotten. I know that people will not forget he existed, but soon people will forget his birthday, the day he died, how much he meant to us, and how he will always be a huge part of our lives. Losing a child to a congenital heart defect feels like you're living a life where you have no control. We had no control over losing David, no control of what happened in the operating room or the cath lab, no control over what happened while we weren't there. Nurses were administering his breast milk. Isn't that my job as his mother? To feed him, to bathe him, to change him, to protect him. I felt like I failed him as a mother. Losing him has made me very defensive. I feel like I have to defend why I have just as much right to grieve over losing my infant child as a mother who lost her child at an older age. I cannot stress this enough. Your child is your child. You will always love them. The saying, I love you more and more every day, is just that, a saying. I love David just as much as I love Barry, and now that he's gone, I still love him just as much. It's impossible for me to love either one of them more than I already do, because I love them with my entire heart and soul. One of the biggest impacts losing David has made on my everyday life was my relationships with other people. No one can understand what it's like to lose a child unless you've lost one yourself. Therefore, it's impossible for people to understand my grieving and how it needs to be done at my pace. Not the pace the rest of the world thinks I should be moving. So many times I felt like people were trying to push me into doing something I wasn't ready for. Because of this, it's caused me to be more distant with the people I love. Little things to most people can be some of the hardest things for a grieving parent to do. After losing David, I also made many new relationships. I joined online support groups for parents of children with a congenital heart defect and support groups for parents who have lost a child. It's given me a lot of comfort in knowing I'm not alone, knowing my feelings are completely normal. One of the greatest relationships I made was with a mom who was in the PICU with us. Her son and David's journeys were so much alike, and her and I have so much in common. Well, besides the fact that she's much older than me. I was so worried that after David passed away, we would no longer talk anymore. I thought it would be too uncomfortable for her or that she would fear for me to see her son. But we didn't stop talking. It was never weird or uncomfortable. She was the only person I felt comfortable talking to about how I felt. Because she felt a lot of the same things and they feared their son would not make it. I'm so grateful they're in our lives. It gives me so much joy in seeing how well he is doing. It reminds me that we didn't put David through all those surgeries for nothing. If I can give any advice on how to treat a family member or friend who is grieving the loss of a child, it would be to give them space. Let them know you're there for them, but don't try to push them into doing things they're not ready for. Don't try to take their control away. We're fighting so hard to gain some control back into our lives, we don't want to fight for it with the ones we love as well. And please, do not feel uncomfortable talking about our children. So many grieving parents I've talked to have all said the same thing. We wish everyone else would feel as comfortable talking about our child as we do. We think about them all the time, and it makes us smile knowing that you think about them too. Losing a child is the hardest thing in the world to go through. It is my greatest hope that through funding and research, less parents will have to go through what we are. That more parents will be able to bring their child home and watch them grow and strive. Thank you to each and every one of you who is helping to make that possible.